These are the Minecraft glitches that were so broken, Mojang was forced to remove them. Starting with how we got infinite XP from just one furnace. Alright, so first what you would do is place whatever item you wanted to smelt inside of the furnace. And then when you begin smelting, you would swap out that item in the output slot with another item from your inventory. And this tricked the game in such a way that we would continuously get XP as if it was rewarded from the smelting process. And while that glitch obviously had to be fixed, it was still nothing in comparison to the zero-tick farms. Now for those of you who don't know what a zero-tick farm is, they worked because of a glitch where pistons could be activated and deactivated almost instantaneously. Now the game usually runs at 20 ticks per second, but in this case, it just completely bypassed all of that. And by sending redstone signals so quickly through the piston, we could move blocks in the exact same game tick. And the reason this had to be fixed was because it allowed players to harvest crops at extremely high speeds, immediately giving us an infinite amount of sugarcane and bamboo that we could use for other things. Imagine a fishing rod hooked up to a redstone clock that cast and reeled endlessly. And just like that, fish and loot would magically funnel into your chest via the hopper. See, by combining this setup with zero-tick farms, you could skyrocket the efficiency. And according to a lot of players, they were overpowered and they made the game way too unfair for those who wanted to play regularly. And it seemed like Mojang agrees, since these farms no longer work. And while there are new designs out there to get you the same kind of loot from a fish farm AFK, it's a lot more complicated and a lot less effective. One of the oldest duplication glitches in Minecraft dates back to the original alpha versions. For this glitch to work, you place a cactus in the shape of a number 5 like you'd see it on a dice, like this with a hole in the middle, and then to duplicate the wood, you place the boat in the middle of the hole while standing near the cactus. And while at this point, usually after breaking the boat, you would only get about half the materials back, by doing this, you would end up with even more planks and sticks than you had originally to craft the boat, which started us on this long journey of Mojang trying to remove duplication glitches in practically every version of survival. And our boats were the only wooden item that we were duplicating, since with the help of doors, we did have a duplication glitch as well. To start this off, you'd place a cactus, and then upon placing the door next to the cactus, you could get the bottom half of it to break and drop a full door while the top door remained the same. And just like that, we've now got 2 doors that we're able to get into our inventory, which while it is handy and easy to set up, it wasn't exactly game breaking. But even then, Mojang patched it, and they did this before we even had the opportunity to stack our doors, which would have made this a lot more useful at least. Traveling for long distances is not an easy feat, especially in the nether, and the 1.16 update hasn't helped that much except for this glitch. See, players discovered that if you were to ride a strider and lean it against a wall, you'd start going ridiculously fast in just a matter of seconds. Now for obvious reasons, this was removed, and while I can't say that it makes any less sense to be in the game than Iceboat Highways, it is also true that the strider was supposed to be a slow mob, and it was quickly patched out in just a later snapshot. The glitch we see here allowed players to generate an endless amount of Dragon's Breath, which is supposed to be a very hard to obtain item only accessible during a dragon fight. But the way that this is work is that players would look up at the Ender Dragon while it was attacking, and then interact on its head directly with a glass bottle, causing the Dragon Breath particles to spread out across the entire end island. Which for those of us in Java who aren't able to make tipped arrows in the same way that we can on Bedrock, this seems like it would have evened the scores a little bit, but nonetheless, it's been patched out. When Mojang added in the dolphin to Minecraft, I don't think they could have expected this glitch, but as players found out, you could exploit it in such a way by setting up a water stream with the dolphin inside of it, and then having that go into a nether portal, where then you can throw down a shulker box near the portal, the dolphin would get up, entering the portal, and the shulker box that we had dropped would be duplicated, giving us a carbon copy of anything that was inside of that extra shulker box. And while I think Mojang wants to make dolphins useful, they don't want to make them this useful. It's been patched out. Here's a glitch that's older than Minecraft itself. To pull this off, the player would put any items inside of the chest, and then press the escape key. As soon as you log back in, all the items would appear to be in the chest as well as the inventory, giving you 2 copies for doing something as simple as quitting the game. But after Mojang made a change to how the game saves our world when we hit escape, this was no longer possible in any released version of Minecraft. Have you ever had a glitch so bad that it felt like the game was falling apart? Well, in Bedrock Edition, one of the worst glitches occurs anytime that you doubled your distance from spawn point. So here, when you got to this distance, your movement would start to lag absurdly, causing significant gameplay issues. And eventually, you would just fall through your world, making you lose all your progress, and guess what? Anything that you had would be completely lost in the void as well. And it was glitches like these that were a big reason why Mojang didn't add hardcore mode until very recently into Bedrock Edition. Thankfully, this doesn't happen anymore. In alpha version 1.0.15, players discovered they could place torches directly on leaves, even though it was transparent block. But because we weren't supposed to do that, the game did not handle this interaction well. And if you think this looks crazy, just wait until you hear about the armor stand glitch. Armor stands used to create some really weird effects. For example, by placing an armor stand on a slime block, that would cause slimes to appear on the ground. Or by putting a raw rabbit onto its head, that would then show a rabbit mob sitting there. And the same would happen if you put a fish item onto it. That would make the fish wiggle around on the armor stand. And finally with a chicken, as you can can see, it would appear unnaturally large. And while they wouldn't affect regular gameplay that much, they still were removed because they were just too weird. This old glitch let you phase through walls. However, it was only possible in creative mode. See, the way that the game's entity hit system worked is that it completely ignored the blocks that you were colliding with. And so, as a result, players could easily walk or pass through blocks. And so, even though this was only in creative mode, Mojang didn't like the no-clip feature, and they removed it. This wooden block will never burn down. That's because it's not really a wooden block. And back in the day, normal wood blocks were perfectly flammable, but that wasn't the case for double wood slabs. And weirder still is that the way they would break these slabs the quickest was using a pickaxe instead of a regular axe. So if you wanted to build a house without having to disable fire tick, this was the option for your wooden roof. Or it would have been before Mojang stepped in and said, nope, the only thing you can use for a not flammable roof is instead cobblestone. Slime blocks are meant to launch the player. I don't think they're meant to do it like this. See, in Bedrock Edition, you could do exactly what we're seeing here with slime blocks, but by placing a boat on this first and then jumping on the boat several times, then when you got inside, it had built up so much momentum that you would instantly rocket up into the stars. And the more that you jumped before getting in, the higher they'd find you'd launch. You've heard of speed bridging, but this is speed towering. And the way that this glitch worked is that it would let players build up to 8 blocks directly high off the ground without having to jump on the tower and build 1 block at a time. All you needed to do was hold down the crouch button, and then while jumping in place, you press down the place button, and all of a sudden we would have a stack of blocks just like that. And this glitch could even go through single blocks, which means we were able to send TNT to players without them even knowing. This glitch gave a whole different method to using TNT, since by placing a TNT on a fence and then lighting it up, the explosion would go right through it, completely ignoring the fence as if it was made of air. And the reason it works is because TNT explosion in Minecraft do not recognize fences as solid blocks, which, as the more devious among us found out, was a useful glitch when it came to pranking your friends. These are the rarest dogs that you could ever find in Minecraft, so rare that they don't exist anymore. But see, in Bedrock Edition, it used to be that you could dye your entire dog into a single color using a command. And the way that it works is by typing out the summon command for your dog and putting on tame in the NBT data, then you could summon it with specific color valuables. And then what your game thought as dyeing the wolf's collar was actually dyeing the entire wolf. Which is funny to me that they've added in all the new dog breeds in the recent updates, but even then, they didn't add nearly as many variants as they did with this little glitch. When the candles were first introduced to Minecraft, they came along with a lot of glitches. And one for example is that it allowed you to place torches and other items on top of them. As in the game's code, they were treated like a completely full block. And to start, it wasn't just torches, it was anything could be placed on these, which didn't do a lot for helping Minecraft make any more sense. And while this would have allowed for a bunch of cool build hacks, it's not in the game anymore. Alright, pop quiz. What's the fastest way to get to the Nether? While some might say that all you need is an iron bucket, build the speedrunner portal to get yourself to the other dimension, it's actually even easier. Since back in the day, just by pressing the F4 key, that would trigger the game's portal creation code, causing a Nether portal to spawn right in front of you. No obsidian needed, no flint and steel even, literally just by pressing F4, you were there. And it was immediately obvious why Mojang had to remove this because players started building structures made entirely of nether portals, which I'll be honest looks no weirder than the brick pyramids that we had back then anyway. Although wither skeleton skulls are supposed to be hard to find, when the stray was first added in, that was not the case. See, they had a bug where they dropped the wither skulls instead of their usual loot. And the easiest way where you get this to happen is using a charged creeper to explode and kill the stray, dropping a wither skull. And getting a charged creeper in the overworld is a whole lot easier than bringing it over to the nether, but good things don't last that long, which is why this was changed to make the wither boss harder to find. The Farlands is easily one of Minecraft's most popular glitches, which is impressive because it was never in a full version of the game. But before the world border was added into Minecraft, if you traveled millions of blocks out in the oldest versions of the game, you could eventually find this, like finding some kind of hidden level left in by the devs. And while Mojang would eventually remove this in Java, in Bedrock Edition, there did still exist something called the Stripe Lands, which is also visually a mess. But hey, it's cool to see something still exists. Here's how to get some illegal blocks in Bedrock Edition. Since by using very complex systems like we've used here to break Portal Block, you could lag out the game with enough updates of Redstone, where eventually using Silk Touch let you pick up this rare item. And unlike in Java, we can actually hold it in our inventory, letting us place these bubble effects anywhere we want, which I think would be really cool to have, even if it's just with commands. In a brief period between Minecraft 1.9 to 1.10, there existed a bug called piston transition translocation, which is that if the piston arm extended into you and then retracted, it could pull you up through the piston, which when that existed allowed for some incredibly fast and impressive elevators. I mean, really, the ways that this let you manipulate entities was pretty impressive, but now it just doesn't work the same. Not only was the bug patched out, but now if you have a piston push you down, it pushes you into crawling. And I think having some way for this feature to return would be really cool. Maybe even taking after this Reddit post and saying that it should be a translocator block. I don't know, I think it'd be neat. Here's how to hold more than 64 items in a stack. Since as Wi-Fi shows off, if you were to shift click a bottle inside of a brewing stand, then it's possible to stack more than one bottle per slot. And then when you go to pick up the stack of bottles from each slot in a row, they'll continue to stack in your hands, giving you a stack that's larger than 64 items in size. And in theory, you could use this to stack up to 2.147 billion items in one hand. So that's the maximum size of the integer value. Then when you go through and make this, don't just place it in your inventory, since all that'll do is just offload one stack of 64. But if instead you go ahead and drop it, then all of those items will exist on the floor, and probably be a mess to clean up too. The geniuses over on Prototech and Sidecraft have found out ways in 1.12 to get Bedrock to actually drop from end gateways. And honestly, you know when you've completely broken the rules of Minecraft? When your trophy chest looks like a 5-year-old showing off what they got in creative mode. And if I didn't actually see them get it with my own eyes, it'd be hard to believe it's true. That's how remarkable the feat is. I just hope they're careful where they place it after they get it. If you're playing Bedrock and you push a chest into a shulker, this happens, which is an odd sight for sure, since in Java, we can't even push the chest in the first place. So if you want to create an abomination, you're gonna have to stick to Bedrock. If you're not prepared, the Wither can be a tough boss to fight, but one of the biggest pain points to fighting this thing is just how destructive it is. So if you're looking to score a Nether Star without leaving behind a giant crater, then I suggest we take this dilemma to the end dimension. Here, we can dig ourselves the perfect spot to fight the thing, and that's of course right underneath the Dragon's Fountain. Down there, if you summon a Wither like such on the ground, then it'll spawn inside of the bedrock barrier. And from there, you could choose to let it suffocate or attack to your heart's content, both for an easy win. For a brief time in Minecraft, the deadliest mob in the game happened to be a falling block. Yeah, doesn't look too intimidating here, but back in Snapshot 18W31A, there was a peculiar bug where if you dropped a falling block on top of a mob, for some reason that would cause the mob to sink into the ground. And unfortunately, we weren't any safer, since if a player was squashed by a falling block, he would just fall through every other block in the world, including Bedrock, and then die in the void. The only ones who are safe are shulkers, and maybe that means their shells are better for armor than we thought. And portal frames, much like Bedrock, are supposed to be unbreakable. Though, just like Bedrock, that unbreakable tag is really just a suggestion, not much of a rule. And sure, while we could in theory break these the same way that we blow up Bedrock and the Nether roof, a much simpler option is finding some fungus and some bone meal to do the job. If you sprout up a big red mushroom like such next to the portal, you can wipe out 3 frames at a time, all while keeping the actual portal intact. No joke, it even works if you get all of the portal frames busted, letting you design your own portal frame and then some. Now, if you were to get hit by a falling anvil, it's gotta hurt. And while that's true for us, it's not as much for the villagers. Or at least if you compare the two, in Bedrock, if you drop an anvil on a sleeping villager, it won't take any damage. If you think milking a mushroom to get stew is weird, you might want to sit down. Since back in the early days of Minecraft, there used to be a glitch where if you took a bucket to a squid, you could actually get squid milk. Now, it wasn't a separate item called squid milk, and it definitely wasn't ink, but there must have been something that went wrong with the code for when they added this to cows that also let you milk squids. I didn't know people eat squid ink and pasta, but something about squilk just sounds gross. And I'm guessing the health inspector had them change this. Bedrock Edition is known to have more than a few quirks in its code, and while some of those can be infuriating, others are just hilarious. Like how you can make a fully functioning zip line in your Minecraft world. No joke, if you start swimming in a water column and then step out, you'll still be swimming even in midair. From there, give yourself some chains as a ceiling, and you can sail along this without a care in the world. Granted, you'll need to make sure to have blocks above your head to stay in that state, but that's a simple trade-off for the chance to break the game's physics engine. Here's how we can use just one boat and completely ruin your server. Since in certain versions of the game, it was possible that if you placed down a boat on a server and then continuously got in and out of it using the sneak key and the right click button, then eventually we could essentially trick the server into thinking that we're still in the boat while our body goes off and astral projects somewhere else. Meaning we could do crazy things like place these ghost blocks and appear like we're levitating to your friends. Or jump off of high cliffs and take no fall damage whatsoever. And then, the best part, if you wanted to instantly teleport back, all you had to do is just press the sneak key and you'd be right there. Anyone who's ever messed around with the enchanted books in Minecraft knows that certain things are mutually exclusive. So, for example, the way that it is in the current versions of Minecraft, you can't put together all the protection types onto one piece of armor. But strangely so, for a brief period of time back in 1.14, that wasn't wasn't the case. So after it got reported in the bug tracker, most people thought that was the end of it. But that's not the end of the story, because as you can see, if you made this armor back in 1.14 and then just continue to play through all the different versions of Minecraft, then as it goes, that armor didn't get updated, and it still functioned as a piece of armor with all the different protection types. So if you played Minecraft back in 1.14, you definitely have something to show for it. This fence will keep your animals trapped, but lets us jump over just fine. See, if you arrange the shape of trapdoors flipped up like so, the mobs register it as a block from this side to jump in, but they can't jump out when inside. Which means that the next time that you go to check on your chicken coop, you don't have to worry about one of them escaping when you open up the gate. And it'll work just as well for monsters as it does for animals. But I'd be sure to keep your distance away from the creepers. Elytras are great for flying, but hovering, not so much. Which unfortunately makes these really impractical for any kind of precise action like building or mining. But if you're looking to keep the precision of pillaring or bridging without leaving anything behind, then scaffolding could do the trick. And no, not like this, but rather like this. You see, if you spam right-click enough on the top of a scaffolding stack, you'll eventually see a floating bit off in the distance. Now, this isn't a real block, and it's only visible on the client side, but you can walk on it just the same. So if the server has flying enabled, this can clearly help out for manhunts or master building. What's stronger than Bedrock? Yeah, I was confused too. But back in 21W05A, Mojang mistakenly made it so that you could actually place a drip leaf underneath the Bedrock block, that when you then use the bone meal to grow the small drip leaf plant, then the big drip leaf grows to destroy the Bedrock, which is just great. It's strong enough to break Bedrock, but not strong enough to hold a feather. Minecraft never changed. Here's how you get water in the Nether. See, back in Java version 1.2 or older, it was possible that if you put ice in the Nether, it would melt and then turn into a water source block, which was fixed in 1.3, but we would eventually get water in the Nether once again through this snapshot with a glow lichen. Though that got fixed too, so it's definitely something Mojang's trying to keep an eye out for. In 20W22A, there was a glitch where if you logged into your Minecraft world with the clouds turned on and then turned them back off, and if you do that correctly, the clouds should stop moving on screen. That is, until you move, at which point they'll follow your every movement precisely, which is more than a little creepy. I've heard of the hills having eyes, but I guess the clouds do too. Although chests aren't currently a full block, in the old versions, they sure behave like them. And that'd be why we were able to place things like torches, rails, and even ladders on top of our chests. And while I understand why some of this got patched out, it is unfortunate that we can't run our redstone machinery over top of these. That might have made for some cool compact designs. And while you can pull these off nowadays by using update suppression, let's be honest, that just isn't the same. Keeping monsters away from your base is a big problem to solve. And while there are simple solutions, like constructing a big wall of blocks, those aren't always the prettiest. So thankfully, these azalea bushes do the trick just the same. No joke, in the current versions, it's possible to place down a ring of these bushes, and that alone will stop the monsters from getting any closer. Which is ridiculous for sure, but it's hard to criticize something that works this easily. And hey, it'll give you an early start in building a hedge maze. As you'll see, back in the beta snapshots for Bedrock, there was a glitch that let frogs eat any goats that got nearby. So even if they can't eat fireflies, at least the goats weren't poisonous. This was promptly patched out, since it was just some leftover prototype code. If you were to place fences underneath the end portal in the stronghold, then when you drop any kind of falling block like sand or gravel on top of it, you'll notice that when you jump through to the end side of the portal, you'll be collecting duplicates of that same block. Though to do this, the falling block has to fall from more than 6 blocks above the portal. You fail to do that, and you'll just be stuck with a singular sand block, and that's just sad. Now, on this show, we've talked plenty about the different quirks and idiosyncrasies that you can find in Bedrock, and with the 1.17 update came a slew of new ones. To see such, take a look at this axolotl here. Now, if we were to tie up the animal with a lead and then pick it up with a water bucket, then when we place it back down, it'll still have that leash attached. And the reason being is that in Bedrock, all of the NBT data is saved when you put the mob inside the container. So if you need another inventory slot, this is one way to bury the lead. Shulker boxes are good for far more than just holding your loot. And thanks to their hitboxes, we can use these just as much as a block as we would as a backpack. See, if you're playing on Bedrock, you may be able to exploit an interesting bug that allows us to walk through walls. No joke, and the execution's actually quite simple. All we need to do is place a shulker box on the side, stand it against a wall, and then open it up for us to be pushed through. And sure enough, as the box expands, we're pushed over to the other side, and we can make quite the escape this way. So if you're looking to get into your friend's base or pull off a magic trick, I think this does a good job at both. I must be a bad trainer, because no matter how many times I try to tame wolves, I can never get them to sit still. Though the reason for that might just be because when you summon a wolf on top of a slime block and then tame it, you can't actually get it to sit down, since the way that the slime block works, it's a little bit less than a full block size. And that confuses the wolf's hitbox so that it sits down and then stands right back up. I can't say I blame them, I also don't want to sit down in Nickelodeon Gak. Instead of trading with your villagers in the overworld, you should trade with them in the end, for the simple reason that if you get a villager set up like this, and then use the end teleporter gateways, we're able to easily keep trading with the same villager without it ever timing out. And the best part about this user design is that we don't actually have to break Bedrock to do this. Rather, we just flip the trap door, activate the water source, universe, and then trade with the villager as we're getting teleported between the two different spots. That alone makes it completely possible to keep trading with this villager as many times as we want, since it bugs it out and it'll never have to restock. So while it might take some time to set this all up, this definitely could be a design that saves you time in the future. This lock is called Reinforced Deep Slate, and in certain snapshots, it was possible to push around this unbreakable block, meaning that we can move this around to make our very own wither cages in the overworld, though that was changed in snapshot 22W13A. Here's how you get infinite obsidian, at least infinite obsidian back in 2012, since the system to make this was just using a standard cobblestone generator and then placing a piece of redstone dust where the cobblestone would form. And there you go, infinite obsidian. Though understandably this got patched out in 1.8. But infinite obsidian is still possible, you're just gonna need a wither and a whole bunch of nether portals. Have you ever tried sprinting backwards? Well, it sounds crazy, but with a glitch, it's possible. See, the community's found a way that if you sprint and then immediately jump in the opposite direction, you can actually sprint backwards on bedrock, which can come in handy when you need to escape from a primed creeper explosion. Just be sure to be careful not to run into any unwanted chasms. In this snapshot, if you were to die when you respawned, then what would happen is that you would actually be put into this weird purgatory state between survival and spectator mode. And if that already wasn't existential enough, you could also kill yourself by simply punching, given a death message that would say that you were killed by you, with the player's name there and everything. And honestly, dying was the most interesting thing you could do back then. Since you weren't able to move, you could only place down certain blocks, and you were not able to break free. So yeah, I'll stick to punching. Here's how to use a bundle to duplicate all of your diamonds. All you gotta do is lay out 9 diamonds in the crafting table to craft a diamond block, and then use the bundle to pick up the individual items in the crafting table. At that point, we still have our 9 diamonds in our inventory, but the diamond block will remain in the crafting table. And now we went from 9 diamonds to 18, giving you a short track to the new richest person on the server. I would just suggest moving. I don't think the IRS takes kindly to diamond duping. As it is, it's pretty tough to get a beacon to work in the nether, since you've got to clear out all of the nether rack above it. But in the past, it was even worse, since back then, the beacon beam wouldn't even go through the bedrock. So to even get it to work, you'd have to remove the unbreakable block from up top. And thankfully that was corrected in 1.8.2, so you don't have to rely on a glitch to make this happen. Looting 3 is an amazing enchantment, which makes it a real shame that Mojang only intended it for swords. Though even if Mojang intended it one way, that doesn't mean we have to play by those rules. Through the help of the offhand function, it's possible to throw a ranged weapon in our second hand and still have the looting enabled. From there, whether it's instant health on a bunch of zombies, a bow for creepers, or even snowballs on a blaze, the looting enchantment is applied just like the sword. And better yet, no damage is actually done to the looting weapon, letting you get away scot-free and still benefit from the tool's power. Now, you've probably killed the Ender Dragon before you delete your world, but have you ever duplicated it? Since as crazy as that seems, it's entirely possible. Just ask Sandiction. Since if we use enough blocks to obscure the Ender Dragon's place above the perch, we're able to glitch it out so that it'll be stuck in place, completely breaking its AI. And then we push that dragon with flying machines so that it goes through one of the end gateway portals, and there you go, no more dragon. That is until you go through the portal and find that the dragon is over on the other side completely fine. And after enough time, the portal will also come back as well, letting us return and have a dragon, which is great, but it's still not duplicated. But sure enough, after pushing that dragon back into place, if we spawn another one, then we've got 2 dragons. I mean, hey, might as well break your world before you delete it. At least this is a more fun glitch to look at than just corrupting the world file entirely. These gears used to be in vanilla Minecraft. See, in the Java Edition in-dev phase, there were these flat gears that could only be broken by letting water into them or exploding it. And if you tried to break them like a normal block, it would just break the block behind them. And maybe that's why this buggy feature never made it into the official game. Never take fall damage again using this one trick. Since if we were to follow in the footsteps of this example, you'll notice that if you hit the crouch button right before you hit the ground, then there's a glitch in 1.19.2 that'll negate all fall damage that you would have taken. Now, timing this might be a little difficult, but if you're able to pull it off, it's quite the clutch to have in your arsenal. But one last note from the person who discovered this, you have to be jumping or falling from more than 35 blocks up in the air to get this to work. So don't say I didn't warn you if you fall from 34 and take all the damage. Back in 2012, if you ended up going past 30 million blocks in either the X or Z direction, you would start to run into these phantom chunks, where they'd still look like regular chunks, except once you went through them, you'd fall right into the void when you step on it. But now in 1.19, we can get to the world border, but we can't go past 29,999,999. While playing version 1.8.9, if you were to look at an anvil sideways like this, then because of a glitch, that actually changes all other anvils in the world's collision boxes. So if we look at this sideways anvil and then walk backwards into a wall of anvils, we'll phase through as if there was no collision box whatsoever. And while I love how goofy this trick is to pull off, I also like imagining how goofy it must have have been to discover this. And I would have loved to imagine how surprised someone was when they built a weird wall of anvils, only for it to get even weirder. In Bedrock Edition, if you lay a cauldron underneath a piece of bedrock, or any block for that matter, and then fill it in twice with powdered snow buckets, the result is a powdered snow block in place of that bedrock. And what's even better is that we can reuse that same snow for doing it all over again. When a zombie or skeleton used to stand on a slab, it wouldn't burn into the daylight, which is terrifying to say the least, so thankfully this got fixed as well in 1.8. Otherwise, I'd have to make sure that I place a lot less slabs in my base, and I'm not looking for that kind of reality check. Every now and then, Mojang puts their foot down on a certain feature, and among those, vertical slabs might be the most famous, which is their decision to make. But that doesn't stop us from having vertical slabs in vanilla. See, with the help of TNT and water like so, we can glitch out this wall so that we have our very own vertical slab of sorts. And folks, this even works for getting illegal glass pane and fence variants as well. So even if Mojang says no, with this glitch, the option's still on the table. Minecraft's world border is an odd piece of code, and when you fly out 30 million blocks to visit, you'll see as much. But while there's been plenty of attention given to these glitches, I think this is equally strange. See, if you get a spider next to the border wall, then the mobs will start climbing it as they would any other, which I guess makes some sense, but I'd figure that since we can't place any of our blocks on it, they'd have nothing to grab onto, and it's maybe the only chance they'll ever have at climbing up to build height. Hanging roots aren't a very useful item, but Mojang must have thought they were pretty important, since back in the first pre-release for Minecraft 1.17, there was a very strange visual bug where if you threw out the hanging roots, it would render at the same size as the item when placed down on the ground, which made it dwarf every other item they would throw on the ground. And when you look at this, it sure does seem important, but when you actually place down the item, not as much. You can't see it, but there's invisible pistons here, and the way we did that is using a bug that's in Bedrock Edition, since if you play on this version, you can make a piston invisible by breaking it while it's being powered by a repeating redstone clock. And then when you add back in the blocks and break the clock, it can still function like a regular sticky piston, which I'll admit would make for the coolest hidden base of the game if unfortunately it didn't reload as soon as you log out of the world. Minecraft cats haven't always looked this way, and I'm not talking about new textures, but rather removing some textures. Since strangely enough in Snapshot 20W45A, the cats that you'd see walking around appeared to have lost their legs, but it was also most certainly a bug, and that's why this got fixed when it reached the bug tracker. When you place down a block inside of a bubble column in Bedrock Edition, then there's a chance that that block will appear as if you waterlogged it, even if it isn't a waterloggable block. And that's easiest to see with glass like this, but it can also work with other blocks like honey blocks. Though keep in mind, this is just a visual bug. You don't actually have an aquarium there. When you log out and log back in, it'll just disappear. Nobody likes being on the receiving end of knockback, but while it's a pain to be tossed around, this might make it necessary. See, in Bedrock, it's possible to repeatedly punch against your buddy's shield. So if we do that, we can use the knockback that we receive as something of a boost to the new heights. And then we could alternate our positions with them to net some serious verticality. And it might just be the way you and your pal escape out of any future rock in a hard place. And the best part about it is that this is basically just an unintentional feature, so it's not a glitch that's gonna get patched. But whether Mojang takes it out or not, one thing is for certain. It's a trick that's sure to give you and your friends quite the boost. When you stood at close range, a skeleton could not shoot you, since in the older versions, a skeleton would try to rush forward and then shoot the player, which meant that if you cornered it into 2x2x1 area, it would try to shoot you, but all of its shots would just hit the wall behind you, meaning that none of the arrows were capable of hitting the player. And unfortunately for us, the skeletons got a lot smarter in 1.9, and this doesn't work anymore. Minecarts are most players' first experience with using redstone, and most players are perfectly fine with using these railroads to get down to the mine shafts or just around their base. But if you're like me, fast isn't fast enough. And thankfully, we don't need any kind of third-party help to beef up our minecarts, but rather by just arranging the tracks in little circles, we can glitch out the minecarts to move at serious speeds. And while you might want to pop an aspirin for the whiplash, it's a small price to pay to move around your base this fast. And hey, with the help of a boat, we can even do this in a two-person minecart, so both you and a friend can enjoy the high-powered rails as a team. Just one piece of advice, don't try this out on VR. In the past, it was possible for the Wither to destroy its own nether star due to its last-minute detonations of Wither skulls. No joke, there were times where if you killed the Wither, it might fire off one last-minute projectile, and then that'll break the star before you actually get it, making that whole fight for naught. And thankfully, this got fixed in 1.5, where it was patched so that now the skulls that spawn on death were then forced removed. As the old saying goes, lightning never strikes twice. But in Minecraft, that couldn't be further from the truth, and this machine shows as much. See, thanks to the Caves and Cliffs update, we can use the way the Trident entity behaves and position it on top of a copper lightning rod to make a bolt of lightning every time that Trident falls. The result of which is something of our own lightning generator put to use. And the potential applications of this glitch could be wide-reaching. So whether that's changing a villager breeder into a witch farm, a pig pen into piglins, this machine has a lot of opportunities. Apparently, it's possible to stack enchanted books, which is a weird sight, but let's explain. By putting 2 books enchanted with a curse in the grindstone, it allows you to stack them instead. And And this is because you can't remove curses with a grindstone, so it just glitches out the output. And then you can shift click out the end result and it'll put them all back in your inventory. Villager trades can be a ripoff, but this one quite literally is. Since in the past there used to be a glitch where old villagers could sometimes require more than 64 emeralds for a trade. And not only is it expensive, but it's also impossible, since you can only put up a stack of emeralds in the item slot. Fall damage is one of the most common ways to die in Minecraft, so we're often looking for ways to avoid it. But while that's usually done through the help of water buckets, it turns out that powdered snow might be the best option. And a big reason for that is this glitch where we can land on a carpet on top of powdered snow blocks and not take any fall damage, even though it's covered, letting us not only create virtually invisible landing pads, but also build them in the nether. And that's a lot more robust than the water that we're used to. Prior to version 1.18, if you were to put down a composter and sit inside of it, then if you used a piston or a falling block to collide with your head, that would squish us into the composter and that would glitch out the hitbox so that we could see all of the world around you, giving us the infamous composter x-ray glitch. And while it doesn't look like the kind of x-ray that you'd get banned on servers for using, it's still very useful if you wanted to track down the caves they need to light up. And like all useful things, it's no longer in Minecraft anymore. In this super rare seed, you spawn inside an underground lava pool, which happens due to a glitch that messes with the game. And since you spawn in here, you'll notice that there's nowhere in sight to get out. So we're just gonna have to resort to mining stone with our hands, which obviously isn't ideal, but it's about the only thing keeping us from being a medium rare Steve. And so far, everyone who's played this seed has said it's not only unplayable, but also impossible. And while that seems true so far, maybe you'll be the one to prove them wrong. Starting a farm is a slow process, and while bone meal might help you cut down on the growth cycle, it can still be a pain to break the crop and get a measly return. Though if we look over to Minecraft's loot tables, we might be able to tip the scales. You see, the way that the Fortune 3 enchantment works, we can even see the benefit when we break our carrots and potatoes. So, sure enough, the next time that you go to harvest, maybe bust out the Fortune 3 pickaxe instead of your fist. Just that simple change could net you an extra item for each crop planted, which, trust me, adds up. And just 2 snapshots after they'd ruined the overworld, Mojang then went on in 21W13A to also ruin the End Island. Since when you came through to fight the Ender Dragon, you noticed that the End Island generation was completely broken. All we had was a massive lump of endstone, and you couldn't even find the towers or the dragon if you wanted to. So I guess that makes your fight a little easier, but a lot more anticlimactic. And it was fixed shortly after. Finding buried treasure in Minecraft is easier said than done. Now sure, it's easy to find the buried treasure maps themselves, since they stick out in big sunken ships, but actually finding the place where X marks the spot, it's not as simple. And while there are plenty of little tips to help you pinpoint it, if you're on Bedrock, the solution is as simple as a Riptide Trident. By launching yourself into nearby walls in the sand bed, you can glitch through the blocks and find the chest just like that. Is it the most practical method? I'm not entirely sure, but when it's this ridiculous, I'll gladly take another excuse to use my trident. Beacons basically define the later stages of the game in Minecraft, but what these are good for in haste, jump boost, and speed, apparently they lack in regeneration. Now, that's not to say that they don't give regen, clearly they do, but a glitch in the code prevents these beacons from giving the full regen after activated. So, to change that, we can fix this glitch with another exploit, and use this system to deactivate and reactivate the beacon for a faster regen, going from a full regen of 72 seconds with the normal one to roughly 51 seconds with our modified. So if you're looking to save some seconds next time you're in danger, then this workaround's what you need. Using waterlogged leaves, we can see through walls, and here's how. If you're on Bedrock, first dig a canal of water, fill it up with leaves, and then go beside them and till the soil with a hoe. And by doing this, we get exactly 1 pixel of window to see through the world. And it would seem that the reason this works is because the game doesn't render blocks that the player can't see. And since the water inside is supposed to be invisible from all sides, it's not actually rendered. Though it doesn't recognize that we tilled the soil next to it, so we do get a sneak peek through the glitch like so. Here's how to use a cake for infinite redstone. First, place down the cake, and then place a block in front of the cake. After that, if you place a comparator with redstone dust in front of the block, you'll notice that when you eat the cake, you'll have created an infinite redstone signal. And the only way the comparator will turn off is if you update the block. So, don't. In snapshot 21W08B, you didn't have to use a budding amethyst to get more of this stuff, but instead, by placing a piston facing upwards with a slime block on top, all we had to do was line all faces of that slime block with a corresponding max amethyst chunk, so that when we activated the piston, it would duplicate all of the shards. Which, if you need a lot of tinted glass, could come in handy. But I can't say the same if you need a lot of spy glasses, because those are barely useful when you have one of them, let alone 65. When you take a strider outside of lava, it's supposed to get cold, but when you put them in powder powdered snow, then they get warm again. At least that's how it happens on Bedrock. Which, even trying to think of a lore reason for why this happens now, none come to mind. They drop string, not leather, so there's no way they're safe from this. It's just a bug. Pets make for great companions, and thankfully in Minecraft, we're able to collect a few of our own. But keeping them alive is a different thing entirely. And more often than not, we just leave them at home to keep them safe. So to find that balance between safety and sidekick, Bedrock might have a solution. See, mobs over here behave pretty strangely when exposed to the right potions. Meaning, if we take a bunch of our pets, unload a ton of decay potions, and then heal them at the last moment, some will eventually enter into this bug state. In which case, isolate them and you've got yourself an immortal buddy. And sure, the methods might be questionable, but the results are hard to argue. Sometimes the past is very different from how you remember it. But even factoring the Mandela effect, I swear that Minecraft 1.9 never looked like this when I played it. And unfortunately, now when you go to boot up Minecraft 1.9 in the standard Minecraft launcher, you instead be greeted to the sight of everything looking completely broken. The text in the chat will be off, textures look weird, parts of the world are just missing, but luckily when you play this version through other third-party launchers, those tend to fare a little better. If you don't have an ender chest, then hiding your valuables is a tricky business. And while we've talked plenty about the creative ways to stash your loot, this might just be a new favorite. While playing in Bedrock Edition, if you push a block into a chest minecart, then, even though it's still there, you can't see the entity. And here's the best part, we can open it up just the same. Just make sure your crosshair lines up like such where you can't see the outline of the block, and then you'll be safe to tuck something in the bookcase and know it's safe and sound. When hoppers were first added into the game, they initially only had a work in progress texture, but maybe not in the way you're thinking. Because as you can see, this only showed up when you had the hopper inside of your inventory. But even with that said, it is still pretty funny to walk around with a WIP just hanging around in your hand. Since the 1.16 update, the Nether has been a lot more dangerous to traverse. But while we do have new hostile mobs in the way of piglins and hoglins, there is a glitch that might help ease the pain. Now, to pull this off, hold up your shield the second that you go through a portal. Then, after the dimension loads in, you'll find yourself on the other side virtually unchanged. However, the game keeps your shield held up even while you're attacking or sprinting, meaning you can fight mobs as usual while still blocking their attacks. Now, the glitch doesn't allow you to eat or place blocks while you're doing this, but the other payoff is pretty worthwhile. In this update, they fixed one of the oldest bugs in the game. Let's all get some saddled pigs.
Oh, hey there, Jay.
Hey, Dan.
Originally, there was no way for entities who were riding other entities to go into a portal.
Oh.
But now, it works.
Hey, we
Which
did
is so much
it.
nicer.
That's fun.
That's fantastic.
Oh.
No, Jay, no!
With the help of sand blocks, we're able to drop one of these gravity blocks above us and use that to walk through a wall. But that's only worth trying on Bedrock, since in Java, it'll just push you out of the way. Getting onto the Nether roof is a tricky business. And while we typically use ender pearls, those are expensive and painful. So if you're on a budget, this might be the best way out. Luckily, using this glitch, we can make it possible to phase through just about any block, including Bedrock. See, since their hitboxes are so weird, all we need to do is place a boat like so underneath the composter, and just like that, we gain ourselves a way right up to no man's land. Which for a couple of planks is a lot easier to come by than a set of ender pearls. Just make sure you bring the materials to find a way out, otherwise you'll be pretty trapped up there. In Bedrock Edition, if you were to build a cycle of pistons like this and have them extend, then what you'll see, even though it's confusing, is this bug where you get teleported to x equals 0 on the axis. And while this is a pretty big glitch, and it could be pretty dangerous if used incorrectly, it could also make for some funny traps or pranks. I mean, think of it, you're just watching the block feed tape redstone machine, and then 1 second, you're instantly teleported to the middle of nowhere. No explanation, no feedback, it's great. This one makes it seem like Minecraft's having an identity crisis, at least its code is. Since while you are supposed to use a sword to break bamboo and cobwebs faster, it doesn't make much sense that doing that also uses up double the durability than it would if you just used a regular tool. And considering this has been unresolved in the bug tracker since back in July of 2020, I don't think we have any hope of getting this fixed anytime soon anyway. So at that point, the question's up to you. Would you rather waste your time or your sword's durability? I guess when you put it that way, it seems obvious. The Minecraft community spends hours upon hours to find new and creative ways to frustrate the game's developers. And the most recent example of this is the updated double carpet glitch. See, before Mojang patched the original, we could use these double carpeted gaps to freeze mobs in certain squares. And that was a great help for keeping your villagers stuck in one place in the trading hall. But unfortunately, that glitch didn't last too long. At least not in that format. But now we can do basically the same thing by just placing these carpets over bushes instead. And really, whether you're trying to keep the peaceful or the hostile mobs stuck in one place, this just proves the berry bushes can do quite the trick. This is why the hanging sign might be one of the deadliest blocks added in Minecraft. No, I'm being serious. If you boot up Bedrock Edition and place a hanging sign like this, then by throwing a channeling enchanted trident into it in the right angle, you'll see that the trident gets stuck, but it's not deadly. At least, you think it isn't. That is until you have an entity actually walk underneath it. At that point, the trident thinks it's supposed to spawn some lightning, and any mob that comes close enough to it will be struck by lightning many times a second. And then what your friend thought was just a simple store selling tridents quickly turns into a funeral home. Their funeral home. The chest boat still has one fatal flaw. If you drop it onto a slime block, it'll bounce a bit before breaking into blocks and sticks, just like the old boats used to. Even though you can't see it, it's not a surprise that the ground underneath the snow layer is made up of grass blocks, and you can break it to see as much. But while that grass might look normal when we place a torch, when it's underneath the snow, it's something entirely different. And through the help of an Enderman, we can see that texture for ourselves. See, if an Enderman were to pick up one of these snowy grass blocks, they ditch the snow and just be left with a strange silver turf instead. The world border is a weird fixture in Minecraft, and while others have used it to create illegal double slab variants, I think we should just ditch the border entirely. And as so, to do our own attempt at a Wind Waker barrier skip, all we need is a boat and some persistence. By simply placing the boat halfway through the barrier, we can hop in and row ourselves right over to the outer limits. And then, stranger still might be that by going far enough, the boat can even break down into planks and sticks, just like it used to in the past. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?